You're live.
Very good. Good morning to all of you on the committee, as well as to our public uh, throughout the Columbus City School District. I want to call to order the meeting of the Policy Review Committee, about to change its name. And the meeting is open and open to the public. And I know the committee and everybody online will behave accordingly, knowing it's a public meeting. Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Here.
Board Member Cole, Dr. Pierce, Ms. Beasley,
Present.
Ms. Klein, Ms. Ellingson,
Here.
Mr. Holt,
Here.
Ms. White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Wonderful. Good. I think we first have the minutes from our last meeting presented for approval. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes.
A second.
Great. Any discussion, any corrections? Everybody in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That has passed, and we can move on to the only item on our agenda. Let's see. Is that, at least on my screen, it's not large enough to read.
That better?
Much better. All right. The topic is our charter. And I know that, it has been, there are changes here proposed to fit with our new committee purpose and function. We spoke about that at the last meeting when we had Board President Jennifer Adair join us and provide her thoughts on the realignment of committees and on the purpose of this committee and some other ideas. It was a good discussion, and now we need to really take a look at this document and work through it and make sure that that we have a policy that we can recommend to the board. Why don't we just go through it from the top and find out whether anybody has suggestions or questions or everything is fine. First is the name of the committee. Governance, Policy, and Advocacy Committee. Anybody? Anything? Background and purpose. And this one is important. Committee will develop, recommend, and monitor board policy that assists the board in governance and legal compliance, as well as public advocacy on behalf of the district. Additionally, the committee shall serve as a reference committee for policy updates unless such updates are otherwise directed and referred by the board to another committee. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Just as this extra paragraph here, the all activity engaged by this committee was added this morning. I was given a template after I'd sent this out, that a finalized kind of template for a number of the committees as they're working on charters. And this reference to the 5-year strategic plan was included in that. So I placed it here for your consideration, since I think it's
Okay.
a desire
I
for
was
all of the
working from
committees
my,
to have this language. So again, up to the committee if they want it or not, but I wanted to place it here so it was fresh and you could see it.
I appreciate that, and I was working from my paper copy that didn't have that. Let's see, all activity engaged in by the committee is authorized in section 3 below, shall be in furtherance of the board's goals and implementation of the board's guardrails as set forth in the 5-year strategic plan upon its finalization. Any thoughts on that?
The implementation is a bit odd. We want to say implemented within the board's guardrails.
That makes sense to me.
I will also make note of that, Ms. White, for the other committees as they're working on their charters.
Anything else with this one? Well, very good. Let's move on. Authority. And I have a couple. In number 1, just on board policies that can be lowercase or should be. Same thing with board, I think. Yeah, board policies need not be, unless anybody thinks otherwise. Also, in number 3, advisory role, where it says the elected board serves as the decision-making body and is directly accountable to the citizens. I'm not happy with the word citizens there, since that refers to only those in the community who are citizens. And obviously we can't change that to voters either. Then we'd be serving just a smaller class. I think residents or community or something like that would suit us much better. I've been using residents consistently for many years now, because that's who we have in the community and want to be inclusive. Any other comments about that? Any other thoughts?
I agree with that, Judge. I think that's a great recommendation, great change.
You like residents of the community, then you get both.
Sure. Anything else on 3 on authority? All right, moving on. Membership. This provides for 3 board members, one of those to be chair, selected by the president, and then 4 additional volunteers from the public.
And I want to call out the 4, because if you recall, this committee has had a total of 9, and so really be 6 members of the public. 4 is what's in all of the other, or what's consistently been in the other committees. I just wanted to call that out. I placed it here knowing that we probably should and may need to change that if we're going to continue to, unless somebody falls off the committee, because you would then have, right now you have 5 members of the general public and not 4. So it can easily be changed back. It can easily be changed to 6. We can go back to the no fewer than if you prefer that, which then gives a little bit more of a latitude to whoever the chair is or whatever the needs of the committee are, but I just wanted to raise that issue for all of you.
Is this
Uh,
where we'd want to have any specification of qualifications, given the scope of the work of the committee, anything like at least one or two shall be a parent or have legal or policy training or something like that? Or is this one where, it makes sense to have it, kind of wide open?
If you wanted to have qualifications, yes, I think this is exactly the place to put that. I think it's up to all of you if you think that the different qualifications need to be added.
The policy already says the volunteer members from the community and representing a cross section. And these appointments will all be made by the board president. I don't know whether we need to be any more specific about that. I do like, and I don't know why it was crossed out, but on both the board members and the additional volunteers, I would say no fewer than both of those. Or I'm sorry, not on the board members. I think it should say up to 3 board members.
Chair, I believe that the bylaw says that it's 3. I think bylaw 0155 says 3.
Okay. Okay. And then, but no fewer than 4 makes sense to me, rather than specifying the number. Any thoughts? Hearing none, we'll include that. Term, 2-year terms. And you can be appointed for no more than 2 terms.
Although I have had some conversations with a few of our current members who'd be butting up against that. And I think we've had conversations, Chair, about removing that term limits provision and allowing, if we have folks, it takes a little while to get up to speed and start to kind of generate and understand the intricacies of policy. I think that really leaving that up to the board president and the chair of the committee, as far as if they've got folks who are really doing a bang up job, allowing them to continue on a little bit longer than that. So I would recommend certainly striking the term limit section, but the beautiful thing about Word is I can go in and we can put it back in if we so choose. But you will lose a few of your members that are sitting on your committee currently if you do maintain that. So
Right. I agree with you, Eric, that we should scratch this or yeah, and I don't see anything else in this paragraph that really matters to us. Or although the board member shall be appointed in accordance with board bylaw. Anybody have thoughts? Great. Resignations and vacancies. It's pretty straightforward. Oh, I'm sorry. The paragraph 2 is just as to the length of the term, so that can stay. It's the term limits.
correct. It's number 4.
Yeah,
I went out of order. My apologies.
no problem.
On removal, right now it's basically written that there has to be a violation of federal, state, or local law. Is that That's a
Or
pretty
board
high bar. So
or board policy or guideline. Are
Yeah.
other thoughts?
I'm concerned about that as well. It doesn't limit the violations that could result in removal to those that pertain to the school. Somebody gets a traffic ticket. Is that a violation that would result in removal? And I'm not sure that we really need that part. Um,
could it be linked somehow, like use that, but then have some standard and somebody who's making that judgment? So when the board concludes they can no longer effectively function, complete their job or something like that, and then also keep the other language. And actually, I would recommend that it be an or.
Anybody else? Dr. Roush, what do you think?
So if I'm hearing you, you would suggest that it'd be any volunteer member may be removed for a cause, or what was that? What were you thinking again there, Ms. White? Or
Because when the board determines that they are no longer able to effectively do their job, or something to that effect, saying, linking up whatever happened to cause this conversation to happen with their ability to effectively serve on this committee.
Yeah, I like that. Because obviously there are lots of things, including minor violations of school board policy, that any one of us, board members included, may engage in, and we don't want some of those minor things to get in the way of continued service. I don't think. Depends on how strictly we read that, but I'm not sure that it makes sense to be as specific.
sure, it does say may. It's not a you shall be removed. It's just a may be
Right.
clause. So there is a level of discretion that still exists.
Right.
And it is the board who's actually doing the removal, so that it will take a majority to do so, as it's written here.
Right. But certainly the committee could recommend.
They certainly can, yes. Well, it says upon the recommendation of the chair, or we
Oh,
could say
that's right. It requires a recommendation of the chair.
it does.
All right. Everybody good with it now? All right. Meetings and attendance. Section 5 with 7 parts to it. One addition I'd suggest is on number 3, location.
Yes.
We ought to add a sentence that something like, when permitted by law, the committee may meet virtually.
Good ad.
Because we still don't know for sure whether the legislature is going to extend. Likely not. Is that right, Dr. Roush?
I would venture to say likely not, at least what's been extended through temporary law, although there is pending legislation that would allow kind of a hybrid, if you will. Right now, that's primarily directed at university boards of trustees. But But that's not to say that that statute couldn't be amended for other public bodies. So
Sure. But it's still, I'm talking about just when permitted by law so that we don't have.
that covers all of it. So that even if that went through, we're covered. If it gets
Yeah.
extended, we're covered. So I do like that.
Good. Anything else in section 5? Committees shall hold regular meetings at least twice per year? Is that,
That's what's in the current charter. We can make that whatever frequency you would like. Quarterly, semi-annually, monthly.
well, if that's what's been there and we've got a pattern of meeting monthly in general, I think it's fine. All right, then let's move on to section.
I would like to move, I'd like to draw attention to subcommittees. Our legal counsel does not believe that the bylaws as set up give the ability to have subcommittees. And so I think his recommendation has been to just take that out. So I've done so here. We can always revisit it if subcommittees are added to the bylaw later. I think essentially what that would mean would be if rather than sending things to subcommittees for work, you'd probably have to go to a more informal work group potentially, or send it back to the administration. Administration would work with whomever they need to make sure to secure the necessary input.
Excuse me one moment, please.
Nope, please.
We didn't need the additional visitor. I'm not sure about this. What we've done on a number of things in the past and done effectively is allowed a couple of members of the committee, 2 or 3, work on something and bring it back. I'd like to be able to keep that. I don't particularly care whether we call them subcommittees or something else.
And we could probably keep the practice. I think that adding it as a subcommittee here, I don't think it would be a subcommittee of the committee. It would be probably more of an informal work group. Things get back to staff all the time. And if the staff liaison says he should reach out to 2 or 3 committee members who are interested in the process, I don't see harm in that. So.
All right.
This was yeah. I was actually surprised by that. It was a good and fulsome conversation, but I will defer to counsel.
Any thoughts on this? Because my question would be, we can strike the entire section, but do we want to say anything about informal working groups? Or we don't need to speak to it at all and simply do it?
I don't know that it's necessary that it's in the charter. I think it's just part of the normal process of a committee operation, that if it needs an informal work group, it can ask. There have been several times where you've kicked things back and said, staff, please review. And I've gone back and talked to our staff and we reviewed it. We've come back to you with different items as well. So I think it's just a matter of, just the normal function of a committee. I don't know that it needs to be spelled out in the charter itself. But that's just my opinion as your.
No, I agree. I think that's fine. Anything else? procedures and applicable law. As you know, Eric, I've never been thrilled with Robert's rules.
Understood.
um, does and we've not really used Robert's rules in this committee. We've worked the way that I prefer, which is by consensus.
The purpose of Robert's rules really is just to keep a meeting moving along in an orderly fashion and to protect the rights of the minority of a committee or organized society. And so, the formality with which is used, if it got contentious, I guess, or if there was a lot of debate or opposition to something, you have something to fall back upon. But again, the ability to operate and say without objection, the minutes are adopted, or if there's no objection,
Right.
adjourn. That's fine. And Robert's rules even says, look, do that as much as you can. The point of all of it is just to keep an orderly flow and to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. And since
Sure.
this committee operates largely on the consensus, it's small, it works well in that regard. I'd consider it more a fallback.
Anybody else have thoughts on this? Just want to leave it as it is and continue to operate as we have?
I'd leave it as is and continue to operate as we have. That's my
Leave
opinion.
it as- Because I agree with Eric. Robert's rules just kind of sets an orderly pace and an orderly style of moving a meeting along.
I know we have, I know Dr. Roush is an expert in this and serves the board as a parliamentarian. Were these rules, if you know, developed originally for large group meetings? That's what I seem to recall.
It really, the function is to help. I mean, you can use them for smaller group. I mean, it actually lists the different kinds of organized societies and the
Okay.
types of things that there are. But they really are beneficial for large conventions or large gatherings or groups that may meet more or less, meet less frequently. They also work where you have more contentious, I guess, differences of opinion in order to keep the logical flow of business and the orderly flow of business. Imagine, if you will, Congress or the General Assembly or Parliament, if there were no rules, how that might operate, generally speaking. And so I think that there's a reason for that. And remember, the board's bylaws and any other rules it promulgates trumps Robert's rules. So that's why we've always got to go back and look and see, well, what's the statute say and what do your bylaws say? And then if it's all silent, you kind of default to Robert's rules at that point. So.
All right. I'm fine with it. I guess it's just my own pet peeve. And moving on, citizen participation. I think we want to make the same change with respect to the word citizen. Residents.
I think
Do we want to limit it to residents of the community or?
You got all these other groups.
Yeah, I think community really makes sense there, given that you've set out these other groups as well, which are appropriate stakeholders.
I apologize. My window is open and a large truck drove by, so I missed what you said, Ms. White.
And I had company for a moment again. Excuse me, 1 second. much better. I'm sorry. I didn't hear either.
Oh, no, I think that community makes sense in the heading, and then residents, exactly what you've put, given the number of appropriate stakeholders that are spelled out here.
Good.
We want to change corporations just to businesses. It seems we don't need to be that specific.
Businesses or other organizations.
Yeah, the only other one that you might want to consider, like expressly listing, is PTO or PTA groups, parent groups, to specifically invite that group of stakeholders.
I'm okay with that.
Chiming in with my usual reminder that we should choose to stick with the Oxford comma or not, but be consistent.
I like it.
Is there somewhere I did not
Yeah.
use the Oxford comma, Ms. Ellingson?
I think just in the section or other matters after communications.
Thank you very much. I'm a fan of the Oxford comma, so thank you for catching that.
Same. And I actually I'm second guessing myself as I'm reading it. Ohio Open Meeting Law. Open, is it in meetings, plural, or what is that actually what it's called? Maybe we can double check that, but
Or we could refer to the Ohio Sunshine Laws.
yeah.
Good. How about the next one on discussion procedure? I think it's unnecessary.
Time you need a rule like that, it's too late.
Wanting to delete that section?
No, actually, I think you need it. You don't want it honored in the breach.
Have to remain seated, huh? We want it to be mandatory as it is now, or simply guidance by saying,
I kind of think it's a little stringent that it's the duty
yeah,
of all committee members. Maybe just under consideration by the committee, all committee members shall remain seated or
or should remain seated.
should remain seated.
I wonder about the seating part, though. I mean, are we really trying to get at, pay attention and be respectful? I just wonder if there's another way we could say it that isn't saying, like, you must be seated all the time.
Yeah, sit down.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think it is exactly what it's aimed at, Ms. White, is it's more of a show of respect and not have people wandering around the room and kind of just yelling comments from one end to the other and all of that. We've not done that. I've never seen that happen. I don't know that it would happen, but I think that's what it's, the intent is that you don't have just small sidebar conversations going on where people aren't paying attention and then somebody wants to try to, I mean, I think it's trying to maintain that sense of we're engaged in this process.
I wonder if we might want to remove the remain seated part though, and just say, shall address each other, respectfully, and keep it at a more general level, to more directly, because I think that having seen other meetings of this nature go off the rails, it's shouting and disrespect that can poison the work of this type of committee, not whether somebody is sitting.
Should it then be the duty of all committee members to address their remarks to the chair and fellow members respectfully? It's not really a should you do it now. Is it more of a that's our expectation? Or are you still good with should? I'm just asking.
I wonder if we might want to just say, committee members shall conduct themselves professionally and with respect towards other fellow committee members in the committee or members, something like that, to state it in the positive, but not just limit it to seating.
So while discussing any matter under consideration by the committee, all committee members shall conduct themselves professionally and
Maybe we could put the professional after addressing remarks. That way, so shall conduct themselves professionally and address, and any remarks shall be, I'm trying to think about how to wordsmith that. And maybe an address the chair and fellow committee members respectfully. I see what this is. This seems to be getting at like the procedure in the legislature where you're supposed to only address things to the chair, which strikes me as a degree of formality that's probably unnecessary in a committee like this.
Here, though, it does say and their fellow members. So it's I think essentially saying it's not saying everything goes through the chair. I think it's kind of separating the chair from the rest of the committee. I don't know that, and knowing this particular chair, I don't think that's. I think that he would view himself as a part of the whole committee and not above it. So you say address their remarks to their fellow members respectfully. I mean, that's what we're getting at is, and when you're having dialogue or addressing each other, it should be in a respectful manner.
Maybe we could just end it with, address remarks to chair and fellow members, and then period, and then say, and all comments will be made in respect. Maybe we just have a separate sentence just to say, like, don't shout.
Now, I think one of the things that seems to do is preclude discussion with others that may be attending the meeting but are not on the committee. And there are times where that has been helpful. Maybe we include something that, with consent of the chair, others in attendance may be brought into the discussion. Something of that sort.
The line before it kind of is open to that possibility, but it looks like it's a one-way street where members of the committee could speak to the audience, but members of the public may not be able to have that dialogue.
Right. So this sentence would be the flip side of that, or what do you think?
I just worry that brought into the discussion is not quite specific enough.
You want to just drop that proposed sentence and leave it with what's already written?
I think so. And actually, now that I'm thinking about the two-way dialogue, that all comments and discussion, maybe that should say for anybody participating in a meeting will be made in a respectful manner.
I'm fine with this now. Others? And then we have minutes.
You once again need a comma after resolutions, and then in the original text towards the bottom of this section, it refers to subcommittees, which should be struck.
Thank you.
Very good. And finally, the charter may be amended by the committee, no, only by the board, but upon recommendation of the committee. Is that correct?
Correct. The committees are all creatures of the board, and so the committee would vote to make this recommendation for its charter amendments. The board has to approve it. And the question is the board do you want to grant the board the authority? I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't know if it's granting the board the authority. I think the board already has the authority. They can essentially do with their committees as they wish. So, do not ask me what. Do not ask me. I now do not recall why I added this particular sentence. Just trying to streamline if committees change or something, duties need to be added to that the board, if the board essentially wants to empower you with other authorities or duties, that they can just do that without you having to come back and amend your charter. So if the board says, you know what, governance policy committee, I now want you to do X, we're adding X to your charter, they've got the authority to do so without having to go through this process and dialogue about, well, the board has now referred this to you. It's
I
but
guess go ahead.
I
I was going to say my thoughts are that the sentence is unnecessary, but it may be a helpful reminder just to anybody reading this that all power is in the board. Yeah, I think it can stay unless anybody thinks otherwise. All right, we've gotten through all of this. The next question would be, what is not here that we'd like to add, if anything? And that's always the harder part.
Is there thought given to how you want to invite sort of public participation, or how folks can find out about these service opportunities on various committees? I think the process is somewhat opaque now, and it has been in practice as well. But there are a lot of really talented and engaged members of our community that, if you don't know that something exists or what the group does, it can be hard to be engaged.
How do we do that? You want to simply include the committee through staff shall
Maybe I should get into
ensure that
yeah. So for instance, it speaks of 2-year terms, but it doesn't say like when the 2-year terms come up. So is that something that's anticipated that it'll happen like, each year or a certain type of time of year? I mean, and maybe that's just a granular level of detail that's not appropriate for this this particular document, but it's just something to think about.
it'd probably be helpful to have it annual, calendar year. The only other options would be not to speak to it at all, or to do it on a school year basis. But I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine too, you're probably going to want to have the terms somewhat staggered so that you can maintain a continuity of knowledge on the committee for the volunteer members. You may have an odd number. So when you speak of half.
Possible. I would hope that we wouldn't have an even numbered committee because you've got 3 board members. So it's possible you could have, we.
Yeah, having a start and end date also gives you the benefit of, existing members can know when do you sort of wind down your service or notify folks that you aren't intending to continue in a more like orderly way.
How does that look to everybody?
That looks right to me. Sorry to keep doing this. The second use of odd numbered doesn't need to be hyphenated. There's an odd number of members there.
Thank you. Ms. Ellingson, I appreciate I love the grammar. That keeps us looking good. So thank you. No, please keep it coming.
Well, in that case, I was sitting on another in section 4, number 2. Board member needs to be plural under term. Board members shall be appointed. Yeah, right there. The second sentence.
Thank you very much.
I think that's all good, and Kelsey, I do appreciate the grammar input.
You should sell your services as a proofreader.
Consider it.
Do we want to include a sentence that no volunteer member may leave the committee without finding a replacement to recommend? All right. Are there any other items through this policy that, or through the charter, rather? Anything else to add or consider adding? Committee's all happy with this as it is? All right.
Sorry, I'm sorry to to get back to this again, but once again, the process is still kind of opaque for how do people express interest or get selected as a volunteer member of the committee. Would it be preferable to put some sort of public notice out there of here are the terms that are up and an opportunity for folks to express interest in service, or filling out a little bit more about what that selection process will look like, or does it make sense to continue the current practice, which is, like I said, somewhat opaque?
Yeah, I'd like to make sure it's really open to the community rather than just insiders. Um, so I think that's a good catch and addition.
Is there a time, so if we're aiming for, the service to commence in January, do we want to say like, towards the beginning of the school year, or just give a date to express for the next term?
You want a rolling kind of, even if it's in the middle of things, hey, I think I'm interested in this and put me on the list, keep it rolling, or do you want to have a specific like window? Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, and honestly, once again, this might be something that you want to consider for all committees. I've just gotten all the emails and things about the master facilities plan, and I love that because I was like, wow, like now I know who's going to be on this important committee and how they're going to make that decision. It just might make sense to kind of maybe not that level of emails and phone calls and stuff, but something to just say these are the types of committees that have a role for public participation. Here's the process and the timeline for when you can express interest and when the decision is going to be made, because otherwise people just don't know.
I guess the question is, should that be in this and all of the charters, or is that more of I guess a policy or bylaw question? Should that be something that's more macro and universal?
Honestly, I think it should probably be more macro, and probably those should be aligned for all of the committees. So, but I'm just throwing that out there that I think that would be something helpful, not only for this, but for others.
I agree with that. With I think a rolling list makes sense because it's still going to be dependent on whether somebody remains interested, even if they've not taken their name off the list.
So is the committee interested in having me put together some language to present at the next committee meeting for the board to consider as part of its bylaws, whether it's part of the overarching committee section or a brand new bylaw? I don't know which it would be. I mean, that gets into the weeds that probably you all are. It's going on in my head right now, but
Yeah.
would you like some language to consider, I guess, in one form or another?
And I think there are lots of right ways to do it, but having that decision made across the board might make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's something I think we should encourage the board to do, and making a recommendation to the board uh, of an appropriate change that's universal would be a good idea. Thank you, Emily. Dr. Roush, is this something that you'd like any additional direction on, or do you want to simply bring something to the next
I will
meeting?
bring something up and I'll figure out if you all are fine, I'll present it in a format. And if you want to put it in another policy or bylaw, we can do that as well, but I'll at least bring the language forward so that we can have that. And if the committee is okay with that, I'll just use discretion as far as where to place that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Might want to include some language about the board periodically announcing the opportunities.
Okay.
All right. Anything more? Everybody good with the charter as it is now written?
I think you should remove that paragraph 7 until a decision is made on that, on the process. But I also think that it's, without that, it's fine as is.
I think it is.
You want me to go to a certain section or? We feel good?
If everybody is good with this, do we have a motion for approval recommending this to the board?
I make a motion that we approve the charter and recommend it to the board for approval.
I second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. This charter is now approved and will go to the board probably at its next meeting.
If everyone is fine, unless there's objection, to allow me to kind of harmonize it in terms of numbering and order and spacing and all, if everybody's fine with that, so.
I think that's fine.
I would like to let the committee know I am meeting with our policy consultants tomorrow. So we will have more policies, including the one you've handed off to me today, to discuss at our next meeting. So we're getting back into that role again. So
Very good. All right. I think we've worked through our agenda. Is there anything else anybody'd like to bring up? In that case, thank you all for a very good meeting. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And is there anybody who
Just
doesn't
don't
want
wanna
to
leave.
adjourn now?
We're having such great fun. I move to adjourn.
I second.
Anybody opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Yes.
Have a good weekend.